Hey guys, so I'm just going to be responding to a couple of TikToks from somebody who responded to me just because I thought the topic was really something that I like to touch on. So let's just get straight into it. If you're wondering why there's a Raichu right here, it's because I have become super obsessed with collecting Pokemon cards recently. I just realized I'm also drinking apple juice, so I might be regressing. I don't know. But anyways, grab yourself a drink and let's just get into it. Real quick, I want to say that I was surprised somebody was responding to this video because this video of me is really old. Another thing I wanted to say is stop looking at my pimple patch right now. All right, let's get into it.
Christianity was 100% written by men for men.
In a world where women were socially and legally inferior, Christianity alone taught equal worth under God. Galatians 3:28. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus.
Of course, he only brings up Bible verses that sound neutral to the argument. And I want to be clear, I also am picking verses that I find issue with, right? My thing is, I talk about these things because there obviously is a lot of sexism in Christianity. And number two, I don't think the Bible is univocal. I don't. So even if there are some verses like the ones he mentioned that at best make it sound like the woman and man thing is neutral, there's way more Bible verses that are obviously way more damaging to women, and the sexism it perpetuates. So when I say this, people will be like, well, you're cherry picking too. Yeah, but I don't have to care about what other parts of the Bible say because I don't think it's a univocal piece of work. So if one part of the Bible says something that's better, and then another part that says there's a different part that says something really bad, that bad part is still going to affect everybody else and is still going to affect the religion, and that's why I talk about it. So first I brought up this Bible verse talking about how women need to submit to their husbands. This shows a very obvious difference in power dynamics. Obviously, they are saying if, you're born a certain sex, your place is down here and their place is up here, leading and having all of the powerful positions, because you would never say that God needs the church. It's always the church needs God. I mean, the church is useless without God. So to me, that correlates to no, these two sexes are not seen as equal in the slightest. And then I brought up these Bible verses from Timothy. This will come back later on in the video, but basically, you guys know this verse. You hear it all the time, I'm sure. But this verse, when you're reading it, it's telling women, they shouldn't be teaching over a man. They should be quiet. And then he brings up Eve in this verse where she was the one who was deceived and she was the sinner. This is something that is used a lot against women, is the fact that Eve sinned first. And now there can be a bunch of debate about that, but it doesn't really matter because that's something that is used to justify sexism in Christianity. I see it all the time. In fact, I just saw it in a comment section the other day. I see it everywhere all the time. And there are a lot of Christians that try and gaslight me into thinking this doesn't happen. Like that's such a ridiculous idea that I came up with. I'm like, no, I've seen you guys come up with it. That's how I know it's a real thing that is being used against women. But they'll use this story to be like, actually she doesn't have the leadership skills. She's not good at making decisions. And that's why she should submit to a man, because they actually know what they're doing better. They have better decision-making skills, or they're a better leader, which is bullshit and not backed up by anything scientific. There's no actual proof for this. It just goes back to Eve and that whole story, which who wrote that story? A man. And so that's why at the beginning of this video, you hear me say the Bible was written by men for men, because obviously if a man wanted to justify, having, and don't get it confused. I understand the dynamics back then. It's not about that, okay? We're pretending like that doesn't exist because the Bible is supposed, if you believe the Bible's like the word of God, that doesn't matter. The time period doesn't really matter because this stuff is supposed to transcend time and culture and whatever. Especially when talking about how you should live your life. But obviously, if you're a man and you want to justify your sexism or say, this certain sex is beneath you, It would make sense to write it this way, right? Like to me, it's common sense. It doesn't make, to me, it's quite obviously not from a God, because then you see Eve get punished by God, along with painful childbirth. He says that your husband will rule over you. That's odd to me. It's very odd to me that an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-wise God would use sexism to punish somebody and all of the sexes that come after them. That is quite literally what it is. It's discriminating against people based on their sex, which is the definition of sexism, which is happening here, and I really don't understand how people can argue otherwise.
It's amazing when some Christian women are not able to connect the dots when they say all men wrote the Bible and they also write about men being closer to God, being above women. That is not a coincidence. That didn't just happen.
Yeah, it's also not a coincidence that you can literally track better outcomes for women by where Christianity spread globally.
And a lot of Christian women get upset when I talk like this, and if that is the type of life you want to live below your husband, that's fine. I'm not saying you're not allowed to live that way.
Yeah, the way that leads to more happiness, better mental health, longer and better marriages, more children, and also eternal salvation.
He just threw away his entire argument and said, yeah, actually, sexism is good. It's the way we should live. Why did we go through that? Like, why did we go through responding to my video, a really old video of mine, and like having this argument that the end, when I talk about women living below men, you're like, yeah, that's actually like good, and that's what I advocate for. So why did you make a whole video making it seem like it's not sexist? Like, I don't know. To me, that was funny. I'm like, I feel like you just... And that's why a lot of these conversations are frustrating, and I'm willing to have them. Not so much. I'm not trying to change his mind. If I'm being honest, it's more for the people watching these conversations, because these conversations meant a lot to me when I was deconstructing. But that's what's frustrating about these conversations is, like, they will start off by saying, no, we're not sexist at all. And I'm like, no, that's not right. And then they'll explain to me why sexism is good and why I should accept it and why I'd be happier if I just accepted sexism. He maybe doesn't mean it this way, but this feels so condescending. Like, to be talking to a woman and be like, you might not know this, but you're actually happier this way. You're actually happier when you just accept sexism. It's actually better for you just to like and also things like that are hard to quantify. People always bring up stuff like that. They're hard to quantify because what might be happiness for somebody else might be a nightmare to me. Like, and also in Christianity, there's an expectation to be happy and grateful and don't be a nagging wife and all of these different things. So it would make sense to me also that would contribute to people being like, yes, I'm happy, like I'm grateful, I'm like whatever. I'm not saying they're lying or if there's certain statistics lying or whatever. I just think it's actually not this black and white thing that they can even say. And again, it feels really like what it feels. This has been the kind of language used in the past, and that ties into this next part. So then I responded to that on TikTok, and he responded to me again.
So you cited Ephesians 5:22 through 33, but then conveniently stopped at verse 24. The passage keeps going. It tells husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. That is not a value judgment. It's a command for radical self-sacrifice. And more importantly, Paul very obviously isn't saying that everything that's true for Christ and the church is true for husbands and wives. Husbands aren't divine and they don't grant salvation. He's describing roles within marriage.
Okay, I was never making the claim that it's literal, that men are divine and give salvation, and I feel like he knew that? I don't know. Christians will bring up these Bible verses after the ones I read in Timothy, the ones where they're talking about how, women should submit to men. And men will bring up this Bible verse and be like, see? The Bible isn't sexist. Mind you, it's what he just said. It's just Bible verses saying you should love your wives. To my knowledge, that doesn't change anything that was said beforehand. So I get confused why they bring this up as if it changes anything that was just talked about, because it doesn't. It doesn't change anything. And this is what is frustrating about the whole, like, you took that out of context, because then they'll read the context and it's like, no, that actually doesn't change any of this conversation at all, because loving your spouse, and I know like marriage and stuff was different back then, but loving your partner, whatever, is like the bare minimum. It's the bare minimum. So when he's saying, oh, husbands really, it's about self-sacrifice, they really sacrifice themselves. Do women not do the same thing? Do women not love and care about their husbands too? That's not even what we're talking about. Like, yeah, they both have to do that, and they're both told to do that, but only one is being told, because of their sex, this is their role. And it's frustrating when they seem not to get that, or they ignore that. I don't know. But yeah, these Bible verses do not change anything. And a lot of people, and this happened in my comments too, pretend as if, oh, I saw this comment, and it was about how men actually have a much harder time loving people, so it's much bigger of a sacrifice than a woman loving a man. No, I don't think so. Anyways, let's move on.
I don't know a single Christian who would claim that God and the church have equal value. There's a reason they are being compared here.
Exactly. And that proves that the analogy is selective. If you apply it literally, it breaks immediately. Husbands aren't God. Once again, the comparison is about the nature of the relationship.
Again, not what I was saying.
Even more clearly, just speaking on roles, and you can disagree with that role distinction, but that's not the same as saying that women are less valuable human beings.
See, this is the disconnect. This is the disconnect. People, like, a lot of times Christians get to say, guys, they're equal. They just have different roles. And what they mean by different roles is that we can discriminate against you for your sex, but then also claim that you're just as valuable. I think that is bullshit for a lot of different reasons. And he doesn't even address what I said. And I think that's because, again, he is okay with sexism. He's literally advocating for sexism is what he's doing. And the entire point of my original video was talking about that. So I don't know why we're even having this conversation, because we're not even having the conversation of whether Christianity is sexist or not. It's just him going through the motions of justifying his sexism and why it's actually a good thing.
Everyone said that the Bible was univocal. Obviously, you can find verses and interpret them in ways to fit your agenda. The real question is how these ideas play out over time. Because if the Bible was written by men for men, then it would reinforce the norms of the ancient world. But it doesn't. All throughout the ancient world, girls were disproportionately victims of infanticide. Men could sleep with slaves and prostitutes with no moral restriction, and women had little to no legal or educational standing. Early Christians stood out by rejecting these norms and saying there is a better way. And you can see this play out historically because the first large-scale movements for mass literacy, including teaching girls how to read, hospitals and care for vulnerable women, and later on abolition and women's education, are all deeply tied to Christian roots, specifically Protestant ones that emphasized the importance of reading the Bible. Christians have oppressed women, but in those cases, they're not doing something uniquely Christian. They're mirroring the surrounding culture. But when you see breaks from that culture, like rejecting infanticide, restricting male sexual behavior, and pushing for female literacy, that's where Christian influence shows up most clearly. So my question to you is, why are historically Christian nations consistently the best ones for women to live? And why did the non-Christian nations fall behind so far?
Okay. So when Christian do bad, it's no longer Christian. When Christian do good, that is Christian. Okay. I've heard this argument before that, like, if the Bible is written by men for men, then it will let men do whatever they wanted. No, there's still the religious aspect there. When I say it's written like by men for men, I don't mean that it allows men to do every single thing that I want. I mean that it prioritizes men which it does. And I'm so confused why we're acting like men didn't sleep with slaves and prostitutes in the Bible. Are we reading the same book? And so I think that's why at the end he says, if bad, not Christian. If good, Christian. Like, that is such a weak argument and doesn't really address the real topic at hand. We have men in the Bible, like men of God, doing horrific things to women all the time. The one I bring up all the time is Moses, where he tells his soldiers after decimating a city or whatever that, you know, they can keep the women for themselves, the virgin women and girls for themselves. But again, people like this are just going to say, oh, that's not Christian. Like, people are just sexist in general and they do terrible things. That's not actually special to Christianity. But what is special to Christianity is when we treat women well. We're the only ones who do that. Like, why? That's a huge claim to make, that actually treating women good in any kind of way is actually a Christian value that comes from Christianity specifically. That's their thing. That's a wild statement to make. One more thing I want to add, and it's really the last thing I want to say, and I said this on TikTok. I want to make this clear at the beginning. I'm not saying sexism and racism are the same, but what I will say is the kind of argumentation this guy uses, and a lot of people do, they'll do something that people did to justify their racism a lot in the past, like Jerry Falwell Sr., when he had the whole issue of having black kids in his white Christian schools, and his arguments mirror this guy's exact arguments, where he says they're actually happy when they're separate but equal, which we know is bullshit. This idea that, like, no, this is actually really good for them. Like, it's the kind of talk that's been used to justify bigotry for, I don't know, ever, maybe, I don't know, for a long time. We see this in so many different cases, and I just find it interesting that the same type of language is used over and over. It's just recycled to make them feel justified in discriminating against others. And when you see it once, you see it in all of these different cases where it's just the same argument, slightly different words. So, separate but equal, and then equal but different roles. It's just, I don't know. To me, it's very clearly like, please, this is my description as to why this type of discrimination is okay. This type of sexism, homophobia, transphobia, racism, whatever, this is why it's actually okay to be this. But they just don't want the baggage of those words being connected to them, but they are by definition. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I will be making a video next week. I know I fell behind, but yeah, this is a topic I talk about a lot, which is the sexism within Christianity, and I will not be gaslit into thinking it's not a thing, because it definitely is. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.